Hello, hello, and welcome, Midlife Sisters. We have a special guest for you today, Linta Mustafa. Thank you and welcome so much, Linta, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell our midlife sisters. So, the month of June was all about different types of testing to really get down to kind of root cause. And so, we're ending our last, video this month, which I think is so important because we haven't talked about it at all this month, which is on gut health testing, stool testing. And Linta is the CEO and co founder of a fairly new company out of the Toronto area, which I've had the pleasure of meeting, going down to her launch party, meeting lots of health professionals, hearing a bit about her story. Her company is called Vitract. And I am so excited to just give you a little bit more insight to who she is, and the tests that she does and why we would even test poop. What would it tell us, and how does it benefit the woman in midlife and beyond that's going through the transition and kind of struggling with their hormones and their gut health. And I'm really excited to dive in. So why don't we start off with the first question? Just tell us a little bit more about your story and your inspiration about this gut test. Why in the heck would you think about wanting to study poop for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into this. So I was a former varsity athlete, a wrestler, actually, believe it or not. And I was in second year university. I went to Western, and I was studying genetics and medical science at Western. And it's so interesting because none of my courses had ever brought up microbiome, right? So you have all of these pre-med students going into medical school, and what is so fundamental to our overall health and well-being, the gut microbiome, is very largely ignored. And this was years ago, but even today, that's the case. So I started to experience all this inflammation in the joints of my hands. It was a very sudden onset. I stopped wrestling. I had no idea what happened. I went to see the doctor on campus, and he took one look at me and he said, "This is not arthritis. I don't know what this is." Long story short, I spent the next 2 years seeing rheumatologists, different autoimmune doctors, and they said, "You have something autoimmune in nature. We just can't figure out what it is." At one point they thought it was RA, then they thought it was lupus, then they just really couldn't pinpoint what exactly it was. And I think that's quite common. What was so jarring was I was like 20 years old, right? And they had no clear solutions. They said you could be on immunosuppressants for the rest of your life, and that's sort of the way to manage this. So had sort of the upper advantage in that situation because I was really used to reading research papers. It's what I was doing in school. So I went and did a bunch of my own research, and we were learning about epigenetics at the time in school. So I was just really interested to see like what are other things that I could do, and that's what kickstarted this whole thing for me. I started to eventually work with a functional medicine provider, and I worked with her for about 6 months, and the whole focus was on healing the gut. I thought was that was so interesting because it was the first time I was learning about gut health as a medical
Yeah,
student, right? Or a pre-med student.
yeah.
And so I worked with her, and that reversed all my inflammation. I've been completely off meds, and it's been years and years now, and I'm healthy. And I think when I reflect on that experience, I think about not only was the care out of pocket, the protocols out of pocket, but the supplements, everything else, but the functional testing was out of pocket as well. And that's the most expensive part of the
Yeah.
care. And at the time, I remember saving up for months to be able to get one of the tests that cost $600. And so I left. I did other things. I worked in banking. I worked in a longevity company. We were doing a lot of interesting things, and I kept coming back to this idea of the gut microbiome and the role it's going to play in healthcare, and the bigger role it's going to play in healthcare as we sort of switch to this preventative model as an industry. And it wasn't until I met my co-founder, who you've met also in person. He's a PhD in molecular genetics, deep domain expert. He has been looking at stool samples all the way from children in Nigeria to adults here in North America. And so he's
Mhm.
seen all this diversity. Um, and we sat down and we said, I think there, we were like, there's a better way of doing this. There's a better test that we can build that has more comprehensive biomarkers, is easy to read, doesn't read like a lab test. So more people can pick it up, and is more affordable. And so we dedicated the past couple of years of our life, or of our lives, to building this and getting it to market. Um, and yeah, we launched this test in January of this year, and we're in hundreds of clinics already. And I think what's so exciting is the rate that we're growing at just validates this point of people want to test their microbiome. It's just previously been so inaccessible. Um, yeah.
That's exciting. It's so inspiring. I love when the story is like, here was my pain and I created a solution for people. So you're going to change a lot of lives. So explain to the women that are going to watch this. Okay, so they've heard your story, it's inspirational. You were able to heal your own health crisis, had to go outside the medical model, which we talk a lot about to our women. Is sometimes we have to and spend the money, but it's worth it because here you are living in inspiration, which is just awesome, right? Is explain a little bit about why why somebody would want to move towards a stool sample and analyze it. What would that do? What would that share with the health practitioner or even just the lay person that's like, maybe I should get tested, but what would it tell me?
Yeah. So I think today, at this point in history, where we're living in a really exciting time, scientifically speaking, that we know a lot about the microbiome today that we didn't know decades ago. So what we do know today is what are the signatures of a healthy microbiome? We know that. And so there are about 2,000 papers that come out in the microbiome field every single month. So there's such a large volume of research. And all of this research is being funded by at the government level. In the past year, the US has funded almost $1 billion in microbiome research, right? And the reason they're doing this is so that we can advance medicine. But it's going to take this public-private partnership where somebody like us and other companies like us can come and take that research and then translate it into, all right, we know a lot of things in literature, but can we pull out what's most important and what we're seeing again and again and again and know to be true, and then translate that to people so in an efficient way where they can use that information.
Yeah.
So what we now know about the microbiome are what are the good bugs,
Mhm.
what are the and we'll call these the probiotic bacteria.
Yeah.
And then you have what are known as the commensals, which is these, look at them as the neutral bugs, the bugs that keep the homeostasis of the microbiome. And then you have pathobionts, which are pathogenic bacteria, but it's very normal for them to be present in the gut flora as long as they're not present in very high quantities.
Mm.
The gut works in this, it kind of works like a jungle. There's only a finite amount of space, and everything works together to keep things in check.
Mhm.
And then what we also know are exogenous pathogens, things like salmonella, H. pylori, things that really shouldn't be in the gut at all, even in small quantities.
Mhm.
So what we do with our test is we essentially pick up everything that was seen in your microbiome. Think about taking a snapshot of the
Mhm.
gut.
Mhm.
And then what we do is we try to figure out, do we know if the fundamentals of a healthy gut are present for you, right? And what we've seen over and over and over again, usually there is a clear picture you can see when you see a test result.
Mhm.
You either have the presence or the overgrowth of a lot of bad bacteria, and you're like, look, I can see exactly what's happening and what could be causing certain chronic symptoms.
Yeah.
Or most of the time, that's not the case. Most of the times, they're just very, very low in the key probiotic species that should be there.
Mm.
And what happens is sometimes you have the overgrowth of a commensal. So, like, think about your neutral bacteria that for some reason has and taken up that space where the good bacteria should be.
Mhm.
And that can actually cause a lot of problems because the probiotic species are are the bugs that will then go and produce things like short chain fatty acids, your butyrate, acetate, propionate, things that you actually need for the gut to function properly and to prevent things like leaky gut. Um, and we can pick up in a test very quickly whether you have those in the adequate quantities or whether you don't. And that's a clear place to start working. But at this point, I've seen hundreds of test results, and a lot of the time, as a function of the world, the toxic world that we're living in today, sometimes you see these test results come back and you'll see something like an Akkermansia or a Rosaboria, things that produce butyrate at a high rate are present in zero quantities. Like they really just don't exist in this person's gut. And that's a huge problem, right? Because if you don't test and you're just guessing with an intervention, then if if you have Akkermansia, for example, at 0%, you can't really bring that back with a nutritional change. You have to literally reseed it with a probiotic, and then you have to feed it the right the right food to keep it there and allow it to grow. So there's a lot you can do with testing that you really can't do without it.
Amazing. So walk me through. I'm a woman that is 53 years old. I've been having some bloating. I'm on the
Yep.
gassy side.
Yep.
I'm struggling with my weight. I know I'm in postmenopause, and I'm not getting results with my medical doctor. I come across your website. I'm like, I'm curious. It's affordable. It's just what, over $100. Big difference between the other competitors. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to hit order. Walk me through what happens next.
Yeah. So once you place your order, you'll get a test in the mail. In Canada, it takes anywhere between 1 to 3 days. It's very fast. In the US, it can take anywhere from 1 to 5 days. So what happens is it's an at-home test. You receive this kit and you collect a stool sample. So what's nice about this is this is a swab, and so the sample size that you need is the size of a grain of rice. It's very small. I know in the past it used to be you had to like get a very large sample, you had to preserve it, put it in the fridge next to your food. Not anymore. You put this in this little vial, you can store it at room temperature. If you can't ship it the next day, it's okay. The sample, we flash preserve the DNA, so it's actually good for 3 years. But of course, you want your test results before that. And so you ship it out. It comes with a prepaid label. And then when your sample gets to our lab, your results will be processed in 2 weeks. So it's very, very fast.
And then we get an email from your company, and then we get the test. Would the average lay person be able to read it and then be able to follow the recommendations, or do they need a health professional?
They would be able to read it. So the way we've laid out the test is we'll show you the bacteria, what it is, and right next to it, rather than presenting it in sort of lab-like lingo, we'll actually tell you if what the ranges are coming up as. So it'll say low, optimal, or high. So it's very easy to read. And then also the most important part is the one column that we really highlight on the right-hand side is implications. If, say, you have, I'll take Akkermansia again as an example, is present in low quantities, what does that mean? What are the implications of that? And I'll give you an example. Akkermansia plays a very important role in GLP-1 activation, which is actually what fixes glucose into cells. So if you're looking, if you're pre-diabetic or you're focused on weight loss, that's a biomarker you really want to be looking at. Because if you're tackling at weight loss from other ways, but you're not looking at the key bugs in your gut that activate some of that biological mechanism that can fix glucose into the cells, then you're missing a really big part of the picture. So it's very easy to read. The reason why I personally recommend working with a practitioner
Yeah.
is because there's a lot when it comes to piecing the health puzzle together. You have symptoms, you have medications, you have, pre-existing protocols most people on this journey are on. So there's a lot of things that your provider can piece together for you. They can even loop in the Dutch test, they can loop in other things, and then they can paint this picture for you that as as a sole person who's not a healthcare practitioner, it's challenging to do, because there's other parts to health, right? You have hormone health, you have all these other things,
Mhm.
and gut microbiome is a key part of that. But if you're on this journey where you're trying to solve a chronic, complicated issue, it helps to take a look at the full picture and have a practitioner work with you.
And I love that your price is so affordable, because what I find working with clients is you might, do a Dutch hormone, panel, or you might do a gut health panel, but then they're like, I can't afford to do another one
Yeah,
because I'm just going to have to hope for the best. I'm going to hope for the best that everything
yeah.
is good. And even though your health practitioner might want you to do it, they're like, it's not in my budget. You've put together a very affordable price point so that in 3 months or 6 months that they can redo the test and confirm that the activity and lifestyle is working. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a really interesting point. I didn't realize until we actually launched this, until clinics started using it, how much that repetitive testing model was interesting for practitioners, because
Yeah.
the ability to retest and like work, intervene with the protocol and then actually see, are the biomarkers moving in the right direction, can be a game changer. Because once you get the test results, the main bacteria modifiers are probiotics, food, mainly nutrition, and then lifestyle interventions, prebiotics, and then that's where it goes from being a science to an art, because there's a lot of different ways you can move the same biomarker in a certain direction. There's a lot of different approaches you can take. But as a healthcare practitioner, you'll know, okay, this client doesn't respond well to probiotic intervention, so I'm going to start with nutrition. Um, we're going to first start with nutrition, see if that's making an effect, test, and if it doesn't have the desired impact, then we'll actually need to go in with a probiotic, for example. So being able to retest really changes the game.
I love it. So, women, I have brought you information so that you can learn about your gut microbiome. What I can recommend is that I know that you've gifted us with a discount. So, in the chat below, we will make sure that we will give you a discount code so that you can order it. We're really excited to bring this into our fasting community so that women can test. And I love testing because to me, it's empowering. It's empowering as a woman to know what's going on. I would say we can be our own guru. And I am so grateful, Linta, that you had the wisdom and the vision to bring something that is so affordable. And I am so excited to order my test this month so that I can too just see what is going on. Even though I'm like, oh, I don't have bloating issues, or it's just for me right now, it's curiosity, like the curiosity of a postmenopausal woman. How am
Yeah.
I doing? Could I tweak a few things to even have that like that? I'm all about longevity. So I'm all about the tweaking. And so maybe I'm not feeling that I need to tweak, but my stool, my gut is telling me a different story. Is there anything else that you want to add as we close off this conversation, Linta?
I think there's a couple of really interesting biomarkers for women going through perimenopause and menopause. So I think there's a really interesting pathogen and host relationship that happens, right? Like there are more bacteria in our gut than there are human cells. So we are sort of co-living with these bugs in our body, and our hormones, estrogen, progesterone levels actually directly impact gut diversity. And then it works the other way around too. There are certain bacteria that, for example, have an impact on beta glucuronidase, which then have an impact on estrogen. So it works both ways. And I think for this group, it might be really interesting to sort of run a test and then really focus in on those biomarkers. We also, Nicole, as you know, as a company, are really focused on how can we advance research. And one of the areas that we're really interested on is women in the stages of perimenopause and menopause, and studying the microbiome changes that happen, and publishing work around that, because we know it's existing in literature, but we want to sort of take that research and amplify it. And so we're really excited to progress on that front. And um,
Yeah.
I'll be sharing with you sort of and keeping you in the loop when that stuff happens.
That is so exciting. Yes. And I mean, we have a lot of women that we have helped. And I just, again, we're trying to always bring you the extra hacks and to stay on top of your health so that you can live, that long, beautiful, healthy life. So, Linda, thank you so much for joining. I know that this video is going to impact a lot of women. Not only is it going to give them an affordable test to find out what's going on with their gut health, but they're going to be able to repeat the test in an affordable manner and just know that they are on the right track. So thank you for all the work that you do. We so appreciate it. And women, that wraps up the month of June for testing. I know that Melissa and I have given you a lot of things to ponder, a lot of empowerment, a lot of tools, so that you can go out into the world and put the right plan together with your team. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, Nicole.